Okay, test. I think this is working okay. Okay, so before I get started tonight, I just want to acknowledge a technical issue with the stream. For whatever reason, Dark Souls 2, when running in full screen mode, tends not to play nicely with OBS. But when running in windowed mode, it doesn't seem to capture and upload at the correct bitrate. So basically, I either have to play it full screen and get decent performance out of it, or play it in a window and not be able to monitor the stream the way that I'd like to. I will fix that. I'll figure out what is the issue. For tonight, I have another solution for chat. So I'm not going to be dual screening it like I usually do. So I'm just going to get set up, and in about 2 minutes here, we're going to get started off. So thank you for your patience. I'm still kind of, learning the ins and outs of the streaming platform. I do want to get set up with Twitch eventually as well. Been looking into Restream, just haven't had a chance to set it up yet. Or rather, I did, and I wasn't a huge fan of the interface, but I want to give it another shot. So, that being said, hello everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're having a good week. Just want to take a quick moment to say thank you so much for the incredible response to the Stellar Friends video. It was my first time, experimenting with shorter form content like that, and it was genuinely really awesome to see that people were checking it out and engaging with it. I'm going to continue trying to do something along those lines every month or so, checking out new manga and sharing my thoughts, specifically focusing on things that I can offer a recommendation for rather than offering critiques and stuff like that. I think I do enough of that in other sources at any rate. But yeah, so I have another one that I've picked up that I'm interested in doing some content on, and I'll save that for now, but I'm looking forward to that. And I just really appreciate all of the all the discussion and feedback about that. Really, really encouraging. As for tonight, we're going to be continuing our playthrough of Dark Souls 2. I have a special stream in mind for the next couple of weeks. I'm doing a little bit of research and prep before that, but I have something coming up in a week or two that I'm really looking forward to. In the meantime, I'm trying to think about what exactly I want to get out of the stream and what I'd like to be able to share with y'all as we go through and explore the game. And the focus is going to continue being on level design, enemy placement, sound design, and aesthetics and narrative and how that all connects. So I'm going to be, doing a relatively slower playthrough, taking my time to explore and examine what we find. I'm also going to be keeping in mind what the criticisms are of the series that have been levied in some of the more popular reviews, like those by Matthew Matosis, Feeble King, Mauler, stuff like that, with the intent of eventually putting out some sort of a video that tries to address those criticisms and present my view for why Dark Souls 2 is an effective game, very effective game, a really, really amazing game, despite its challenges. So, or technical shortcomings, or however you want to phrase it. So that being said, I'd like to talk about the shift in perspective that occurs here. And please let me know if the volume is okay. It looks like the input is acceptable based on what I'm seeing in OBS, but hopefully it's all coming through okay, and then I'll verify after the fact too. So yeah, let me know if there's any adjustments you'd like me to make to the streams to make it like more enjoyable. So as we go into this area, let's keep in mind that we've just come from a fight with Mitha in a very sort of almost claustrophobic space. And we've entered into this area that looks downright chaotic. It's bizarre. It's like nothing we've ever seen before. There's layers upon layers of rock and stone and jutting protrusions from the stone. There's a variety of different what appear to be doors or portals, but they're all kind of like abstract. They're covered in these ancient looking glyphs. They look like they could be tombstones, perhaps, or crypts or something like that. It's all presented to us in a very kind of chilling and confusing way that looks like something out of a dream. And similarly, the... Hang on one second. That's interesting. My UI is hidden. Okay, hang on. I gotta deal with this guy. Not ideal. If I can back up correctly, yeah. Okay. I don't think he'll follow me in here. Maybe give me a chance to figure out why. There we go. That's a little bit more helpful. Actually see my items and shit. So this enemy as well, you know, I know that the game gets some shit, and perhaps rightly so, for its extensive use of dudes in armor. I'm gonna lower the game volume a little bit just to kind of help my voice cut through a little bit. Okay. Of many of the enemies essentially consisting of dudes in armor, which I think is kind of oversimplifying things and also kind of ignores the nature of the armor that those dudes are wearing. So as we come into this area, which definitely feels like we're almost going through a tunnel into a dream or into some sort of a fairy tale or fantasy realm, just with the way that the architecture is presented to us, the way that the color scheme shifts. We're presented with a massive warrior that appears to be some sort of an elephant, like mastodon, something like that. Interesting to note that one of its tusks has apparently been severed. It looks like it's been cut off. And then we find these characters again. Now, we've met one of these characters previously in the form of Gavlan. But these characters have such an interesting design if you take a moment and actually look up close. So the weapon that they're wielding is not just a mace or a hammer. It's actually an anvil that's been wrapped around their, like the haft of their weapon with a chain. So it's almost like, you know, the opposite of like swords into plowshares, where they're taking their tools and making that was a little silly, and making weapons out of them. So consider what the story might be there of these characters. Were they craftsmen who were forced or somehow compelled into converting their weapons into, or converting their tools into weapons? Does that imply some sort of a time of war or strife for their civilization? Or could we maybe infer that, you know, speculate as to the idea that forging weapons and wielding weapons are synonymous with one another in their culture? It's another potential, right? Potential explanation. It's just intriguing to kind of imagine why their weapon might be designed like that. This character as well has a similar design, but it's a bit different, where his weapon is actually a flail that can be used to a certain extent at range, that's wrapped around with a chain. And so already you should start to be wondering, or at least I personally find this place to be very evocative and to instill a sense of wonder and mystery and kind of confusion and eeriness. The creatures here feel like they're plucked out of some kind of a fantasy story, and like they might have like wandered and gotten lost along with their civilization in this place that they don't really belong in. They're not really adequately suited for lack of a better phrase. And there seems to be a lot of interesting storytelling going on as well, with the shield that warrior was wielding also not really seeming like a conventional sort of shield, right? The shield itself was it had like a bunch of fine detailed writing on it, and the brace on the rear side of the shield also seemed to be kind of slipshod, like it was fashioned out of planks of wood or something like that. So it doesn't seem to be a bespoke weapon. Now here's a bug, which granted I think is pretty much an objective problem. It's a problem that can be somewhat difficult to solve, but essentially you have a character who is trying to get out through this portal. One of two things is likely the case. Either the navigation mess, which is just like this like invisible network of dots that are connected between one another that show enemies where they are and aren't allowed to travel within the game world. That mesh might just not extend through the door, and thus might not allow characters to go through the door at all. Or that character might have been given what's called a spatial restriction, where basically a volume is defined, basically a big invisible box. It doesn't have to be like a square box, can be complex geometry, is defined, and then the characters are only allowed to travel within that box. If at any time they find themselves outside of the bounds of that box, then they will stop what they're doing and just immediately go back to trying to, get back inside of it. So, obviously that's not ideal. That's a bit immersion breaking. It's pretty much objectively a bug. I don't think anybody is going to look at that and say that it's an intentional part of the experience. And I think it should be fixed. And also, I recognize that it's a difficult problem to solve. It's something that you're going to see a lot, especially in older games, but even in more modern games as well. So this area itself, let's just talk about like the design and artistry here. Very clever use of lighting to draw your attention to specific parts of the area. The lighting on the stones up there like follows the slanting up of the stones, kind of draws your attention up to a similarly colored object in the form of that warrior, kind of gives you a preview of what's to come. You have certain things that are kind of hidden and then certain things that are obscured, like the multiple Doors of Pharros, like Luckstones of Pharros, or whatever the actual key receptacles are called. There's a good use of contrast between light and shadow and gradients between like the darker and lighter areas to kind of, I think, encourage your eye to sweep around and get a sense of the area and what mysteries there might be. It is also the case that sometimes this is used in a way that feels a little disconcerting, like the way that the darker parts of that area down there kind of fade up to the border of the bridge or the ledge or whatever it is, make it kind of difficult to determine where the upper and lower levels are separated from one another. So it does, I think, add to that almost like MC Escher-esque feeling that the entire area has. Now, interestingly, they do put a guiding light up there that's very clear and very obvious. So if you do get lost, if you do get overwhelmed, you have a point light source to kind of guide you that way. And of course, the light is the same color as the bonfire and the torches, so it feels familiar. It feels like it's nudging you in the right direction. So I feel like they did a really good job of kind of striking a balance between the familiar and the new and the eerie, in order to kind of draw you into this area. They also did a pretty good job, I think, of trying to iterate on the torch mechanics. One of the ways that you can, the most obvious way to engage with a torch is to use it to illuminate dark areas, but it can also have a couple of other uses, such as, the most obvious one is probably repelling creatures that are adverse to fire. So getting rid of those creatures like the transformed pyromancers in No Man's Wharf. But also, as you see, as we're approaching the space on the floor over here, you can make it out a bit more clearly when you actually have a torch available. This is also very useful in the Shrine of Amana when there are sort of pits and traps made out of basically there are areas you can fall off into an abyss and die, and they're very difficult to see unless you look closely and go very slowly, or unless you use a torch. And so this little level here just sort of very subtly but effectively taught us to use a torch if we want to engage in that lesson. Namely, it brings us into a place. It directs us towards that little island in the middle with the writing on it by creating a water hazard that we are incentivized to get the hell out of as soon as possible. And then on the very next platform, we see a torch, and so our attention is drawn to it, and we're very likely to go over to that torch, if only by accident, as we're trying to seek that island for safety, so to speak. But then seeing a torch that's unlit in the middle of the area like that will probably lead us to be curious about what it is to see if we can light it. And so that will quietly motivate us to go back and get a lit torch. And then all of a sudden, we notice that we can see the area a whole lot more, and we start to notice the Pharros lockstones. So built into the intro of this space is a very quiet and very entirely optional but very, very intelligent tutorial as to how lighting can be used to circumvent water hazards. And this won't come up again for a long time, but once you learn it, I think it's a very easy association to make, and one that I think will stick with players. I think it's also very important and very nice to note that the door with these glyphs on it is the same sort of door that we come through over there. Like the door frame, the glyphs in the door, etc. Looks exactly the same. And so there's this sort of narrative implication that each one of these doors could potentially lead to another world or another place or another part of the level. And obviously, that's not what winds up being the case. But looking at this door, it looks so nondescript. It looks so, unassuming. It doesn't look any different from any of the other doors around here. Not really. But then you approach it, and you start to realize, oh, wait, no, this is connected to an entirely other part of the world. And so if that's the case, what might then be the implications for all of those other doors? Also, I can't believe I haven't talked about this, but I love this. What a cool fucking way of, introducing a level. Granted, I almost wonder if it would have been more effective the other way around. Like, as you come out of this door, you see this stalactites over there, and they just look like regular stalactites. There's nothing about this that seems like rodent-like. But then you turn the rest of the bonfire, and if you were to turn around and then see this, like the jump scare or like the imposing, kind of threatening nature of it, I guess could be a very effective moment, right? Not that it was a mistake to do this. This is definitely very, kind of intriguing in and of itself. But then you have to wonder, is part of the narrative, is part of the suggestion here, that this is basically meant, like, inspired by sort of a rat warren, where you have all of these different disparate tunnels, all these different individual pathways that are kind of snaking through the underground, with their own little apertures and whatnot. And this is essentially a giant form of that, which I think might be the case. But then, of course, it becomes intriguing. Okay, well, how do these giant, massive, like mastodon warriors interface with the short, kind of stubby dwarves, and how did those connect with the like potential hordes of rats? It's a very interesting, very quirky and unorthodox society that seems to have arisen here. Also, kind of odd that there's a mastodon warrior behind in what appears to be, I'm guessing, a prison, but it could be a tomb. It kind of feels like this is a trap designed for the player more so than something that's just a natural part of this universe. Although it could be the case that this warrior is trapped in there deliberately, that there's a story there. Very interesting to speculate as to why they might have gotten trapped in there. It's also interesting, I think, to note that both of the warriors' tusks are severed here, whereas the guardian outside only had one tusk that was severed. So perhaps that's meant to kind of allude to its backstory. I'm not sure. We'll have to keep an eye open for whether or not the other, like, similar warriors are also... one second. Also have a similar setup, so to speak. If you hear some noise in the background, too, not to worry. My dog... oh, that's cool. I didn't know they had that sound effect. My dog really, really loves my cat, and when they can't play together, she gets upset. So tonight, I'm on pet duty, and they're kind of separated at the moment because otherwise we can get a little rambunctious. But anyway, yeah, I think the technical, like, in-game term for these characters might be Primal Warrior. Oh no, they're Mastodons. Okay. Let's see. Into your spirit. Yeah, okay. So one thing I will say is that the evolution or the I guess progression of the Pharros Lockstone mechanic here is pretty cool. And I wonder, I'm guessing that people are going to have very mixed feelings about it, because on the one hand, coming to an area like this that has all of these different receptacles for the lockstones feels very intriguing, and given that we've found pretty amazing things behind lockstones in the past, you have to imagine that there's going to similarly be amazing rewards behind them here as well. But many of them only have utility in multiplayer, and some of them I don't think have much behind them at all. So I think players are going to potentially come in here and they're going to impulsively commit a couple of lockstones before they realize just how like useless they are, and then they're going to perhaps feel frustrated about that. Or not how useless they are is not the right way to say it, but like that door, maybe I'll go back to it for a second. 1 second. So that door you know, opened on the bottom as a result of me using a single lockstone. But it could have, if I used this one over there, or the one to the right, then it will open the wings of, you know, the left, upper left or the upper right parts of the door conversely. And so if somebody doesn't know that and they come back here, they could spend potentially 2 extra lockstones on nothing. And that can be very frustrating. Now, you can argue that that is mitigated somewhat by the fact that, you know, one of those dogs just dropped a lockstone. We'll talk about those dogs in a little bit too. And you can get lockstones from engaging with the multiplayer covenant. But that puts single players at a bit of a disadvantage. It's much more engaging to engage with the multiplayer mechanics. What was the examine there? There we go. Than it is, in my opinion, to just like farm stones off of dogs or whatever. And if you don't figure that out, you're liable to potentially waste some very precious resources, unfortunately, and not really have a way to get them back because they're very limited in the game overall. So, I don't know. I think it was definitely an interesting choice, a risky choice to do it this way. And I think perhaps the goal was to try to shepherd people into multiplayer by giving them a reward that directly kind of synergizes with the world itself. And honestly, I think that's cool. You have to... I want to talk more extensively about the multiplayer, like, covenant here. But I do think it's one of the coolest ideas that the series has had, period. Like, what the hell? Just seeing the way they give players access to this covenant that actively can grow and be and be shaped by the way that they engage with it. I don't know how else to say it, but like, if you're not familiar, this area is home to a covenant owned by the King of the Rats. And, oops. If you join his covenant, then you will get access to an item that will summon you into, like, a version of this level. When other people enter it, and you can use Pharros Lockstone. So basically, if somebody is in their game and they wander into this area and you have the ring on, what they'll do is they'll teleport you to your game's instance of this level, and then they'll teleport that player into that instance as well, if I understand correctly. And then basically they'll have to survive running through the gauntlet. And the more Pharros Lockstones you use, the more traps you can set for them. So going through this little area over here, we saw that the germ, who's the name of that warrior, came over here, and I think he attacked this, right? And then that should arm this trap. Maybe it's only a single use, but the idea is that, you know, you can lay traps for people, and they'll come in and they'll have to, like, basically go through the Indiana Jones maze and survive your traps. And if you manage to defeat them either in direct combat or with the traps, then you get an item that I think you get, like a rat tail and also a Pharros Lockstone or something like that. So on the one hand, it is kind of frustrating to have your resources wasted, quote unquote, but also you wind up getting them back very, very quickly, and you wind up seeing very quickly how those resources can be used and like getting taught, okay, if you're not careful with the way that you invest them, you can wind up wasting them. But if you invest them carefully, then here's a good thing that can happen, right? So I think that's fair. I also really like the tutorial of a little frustrating that you can't light your torch on these, but I love the quiet tutorial of that germ hitting the switch on the wall, priming the trap, and then kind of baiting you into, falling for the trap, which kind of suggests it simultaneously teaches you as a player to be careful as you're exploring the level. Excuse me, but also to teaches you as a character, as a player, to be careful as you're exploring the level, but also to start thinking about the ways that you could potentially subvert that if you, wind up kind of joining up with the Covenant later on. And then you're liable to come across these and wonder what their deal is, wonder why they're, stonework like that, and then try to engage with them, and then try to put two and two together. I think most players, once they get those two quote-unquote free lockstones, will be willing to try to, risk using one of them and maybe not get an immediate reward just to see how it turns out. And when they discover, oh, okay, cool, like, it gives me a trap, it gives me access to a warrior or something, I think players will, I certainly did, I think players will have, like, a positive experience based on that, and will want to come back and experiment with it. I don't know if there are enough people online for me to kind of show off the, that mechanic now, but I am going to join the Covenant as soon as I have a chance to. The one thing that I am a little iffy about is that there are technically 2 Doors of Pharros locations. Not technically, there are. And I think, if you go through the trouble of setting up this arena for yourself with all the traps and whatnot, then when you find the second one, you might feel a little frustrated, being like, oh, I thought I had already, invested in my little dungeon, like puzzle maze or whatever, and now you're telling me that there's a whole separate one. Like, that could be discouraging, I think. Or players could have the opposite effect, and they could just be like, oh, cool, I love this mechanic, and now there's more of it for me to enjoy. I want to go back and check in the vanilla version of the game, but I will say that I find this particular implementation to be a little underwhelming. It's just never going to be satisfying, in my opinion, to a player to have a character that, like, can't track you and has its weapons and, like, other parts of its mesh just clipping through the wall. That didn't feel like a good fight. I mean, maybe it's not supposed to. Again, maybe you're, like, preying on these prisoners and punishing them or something like that. Maybe there's some deeper narrative, but to me, it just strikes me as, I don't know, incomplete somehow. So I'm not a huge fan of that, I have to admit. I wish they had added some additional variation there. Worth noting that the monster's tusks, the Mastodon's tusks, were both fully intact. So I guess my theory before about, their tusks being severed and then them being put into little jails doesn't really work. So that leads me to kind of wonder what the fuck he was doing in here. Soul of a brave warrior attached to that skull. That's a very interesting little set piece. I like that quite a bit. I don't know if he was just in there guarding the soul that was his soul previously. So even if I don't have all of the answers, or even any of the answers, I hope I've done a good job, illustrating the mystery and the value of the intrigue that's created by these spaces. So overall, this is a very, very short, little sequence here, and part of me wishes it had been a bit longer. But regardless of whether you think, but actually, come to think of it, I think if they made it much longer, it would potentially water down the multiplayer experience. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to cultivate a little, you know, dungeon of puzzles and traps for your opponents to navigate through. And it has to be big enough so that it feels daunting, but also not so massive such that, you know, players just get fed up with the very idea of ever being summoned into somebody's world, or that you as a player have to like spend forever hunting them down, finding where they are. Did I hear? Sounded like I heard some armor rattling or something like that. Hmm. Yeah, I definitely did. There's another character around here somewhere. It's weird. Um, Forgot to mention, I unfortunately experienced this off stream because I was doing some testing, trying to get some like screenshots earlier. But there is an NPC invader that also, you know, invades you when you first enter the level, and that NPC is based off of a character that a popular streamer. Basically, I'm trying to remember the exact details, but there was a popular Dark Souls YouTuber who made a specific build that had like dual Avalon crossbows, and so they. 1 second, sorry. Developers put in a red phantom that looks just like him. I think some, or like his character. Some people might find that a little too on the nose and a little immersion breaking. But I think they did a good job of giving him like his own like diegetic personality and reason to be there and all that. It is kind of a cheesy build though, but certain characters in the game do have cheesy and quirky builds, so to speak. So I don't think it's bad at all. I actually quite like it, but I understand why some people might find it a little bit excessive. Either way, that area feels like a nice, kind of contained, simple space, but one that is kind of working overtime with its overall artistry, and one that is giving us a nice little preview of an upcoming, very unique and compelling, in my mind, multiplayer mechanic that the series has never quite gotten back to fully exploring, you know? So we still have 3 lockstones. We have a bunch of other things that we could potentially use. Bunch of souls. I was thinking about experimenting with some other weapons. See what else I got. Definitely want to check out the Saint-Ear Spear. So the Saint-Ear Spear, as well, is a really interesting weapon because, let's see, where is it? Okay, here we go. Now, how far am I away from, okay, I need to have 22 dexterity, and my dex right now is 21. Okay, so I'm very close to being able to use it. But if you'll notice, the spear itself has, I believe, a head on it. It's kind of hard to see. Oh, yeah, right, so there's actually a head that's been impaled through the tip of the spear. And it also looks like there's a cloth that's kind of bound around the mouth of the spear. The spear itself doesn't look quite human. It looks a little odd. And that being said, the durability of the spear is 999, I believe. Or did they change it? Oh, it's 16. Okay. So, I thought it was 999 in the original game. But at any rate, this spear becomes a different weapon when you completely break it, which I don't think is a thing that they've done ever again in the series, and it's such a cool idea. And it's one of those things that's going to be, I think, difficult for your average player to find. It's going to be a community effort, right? Like, you'll have to be, I know, engaged in multiplayer for a long time and just really like the spear for whatever reason. But once you get it into its more advanced form, it acquires a different moveset, and I think gets quote-unquote better, however you measure that. So really, really interesting mechanic that is something that's pretty unique to this game. Does it have like a scythe moveset? Yeah, I think so. The scythe is pretty good too. Just another one of those crazy things that Dark Souls 2 experimented with.
Oh, I was hoping that you would come.
Blow up with Moglin here.
I've stocked some new things, and I thought that you might be interested. They've been selling rather well, and I may step up operations soon. I'm surprising even myself, to be honest.
Okay, so let's see. Yeah, we got some interesting things. Oh, that's right. So Moglin, I don't know if there's a specific reason for how he manages to do this, but it is kind of funny that he starts coming by the equipment that's associated with slain bosses. So, for example, we have the Mask of the Lost Sinner over here, right? The spikes pointing inward suggest that this was not only used to blind prisoners, but to torture them as well. Interesting. They wanted to torture them and remove their vision. Penal straitjacket of the Lost Sinner. A tightly cinched belt presses against the waist. By now, no one knows who this was used to punish or for what reason. Effects. Okay, this one raises power of pyromancies. So interesting. Like, I know some people are frustrated, and I don't necessarily blame them for so many item descriptions in this game basically being like, this is from a time so long ago that no one even remembers what it is. Who knows? This sword could have been a toothpick. It could have been, you know, like, it's just a little bit frustrating to not have that clarity. The Dark Souls 2, perhaps more than 1 or 3, relies very heavily on you filling in the gaps in a way that maybe feels excessive or like too deliberate compared to some of the other games. But that does give us an opportunity as well to talk about the fact that vitality increases your armor rating. So if you look at the bottom left, you'll see that there is an icon. It's hard to make out, but it's an icon of what looks like a sword like attacking someone's chest. And you can see it goes from D to B to D. As you increase your vitality, your overall armor rating, or like the armor in the game will scale based off of your vitality. I believe it's vitality, right? Oh, yeah, physical defense is the attribute, or is the stat, but then you can boost that with your vitality attribute. So that's pretty cool to note. I think I'm gonna pick this up and make sure to stay in touch with him and come back later. Talk to him real quick.
I mentioned before that, well, I'm not from these parts. I was on a journey and somehow ended up here. The desolation here was disenchanting at first, but over time, things started to turn my way. Yeah, I've got a good few regulars now. They're all strangely desperate and quite willing to pay a premium. Sadly, some of them never come back, but I try not to think about it. Have you seen that warrior lugging that giant blue sword about? I'm no expert, but that appears to be a fine specimen. The monstrous thing has a peculiar design, quite unlike anything found in Volgan. If you should speak to him, would you ask him if he won't sell it? I'd have to take another look, but I'm confident I could offer quite a price. I considered returning to my homeland, but I've decided to stay a while longer. I've started to turn a handsome profit now, and I can't bear to give it up. I considered returning. I've started to turn a... Thanks very much. Do come again.
So I really like the bell curve of the narrative that you experience with this character, because when you first come, he's completely despondent and he's sort of confused and baffled, and he's sitting on the ground. He doesn't really know why he's there, and then you start to provide him with a little bit of, I guess, purpose by giving him like a reason to like helping him get his business off the ground or whatever. But then this is sort of the tipping point for him, and after this he winds up kind of going down on the other side and becoming like haughty and arrogant and forgetting himself in a different way. So he's almost gone hollow, and then he gets a new purpose, and then that leads to him hollowing in a different way later on. It's like there really is no escape one way or another. Um, but I do like the fact that we have a vendor who is providing us with equipment from the bosses that's right here in Majula that doesn't require any transposition, and that also is somebody that we have a direct connection with, and we can see them like grow and evolve over the course of the game. It's pretty cool. It's a little bit abrupt, you know. It happens very fast, but it's still very cool to see it. I did want to check out the Germ Great Hammers, a makeshift weapon created from a blacksmith's anvil, as heavy as it appears. Crafted rather shoddily, but each hit landed is certain to inflict serious damage. Okay, so it's interesting. The weapon itself was crafted shoddily, but it was crafted out of something that was a blacksmith's tool. So perhaps they were more adept at forging armor or other things, and then at some point were kind of pressured into having to make weapons instead. And the Germ Axe. At first glance, this axe appears crude, but with further examination, one sees the fine craftsmanship of Germ blacksmiths. Quite heavy for a human, but flung about with reckless abandon by the Germ. So that phrase "reckless abandon" is definitely interesting. Gives us some insight into their culture and their way of fighting, and it does indeed kind of seem like it's got a kind of simple elegance to it. I like the sort of half moon sickle diamond motif there that's going along the haft. Yeah, it's a really well designed and really interesting weapon. Great work on the model overall. It's great. Nice, powerful, imposing swing. Very short range as far as I could tell. Makes sense though. Hi, cat. My cat's acting up. Oh yeah, I forgot to put on my rings. I took them off because I wanted to get the effect off during recording beforehand. But yeah, I think I'll stick with, what was I using before? Battle Axe for now, but I definitely want to try to mix things up. Do I have any dex weapons? Check out the Crescent Axe real quick. Oh yeah, I didn't like the moveset of that one in particular. Great Sword. Great Sword is pretty amazing. Very, very slow though. Yeah, I'm not quite ready to commit to that. Guitar. It could actually be fun to play around with curved swords a little bit. Although, I will say that dealing with like smaller creatures that are sort of below the waist, like the dogs that are going to come up, the arc of this weapon is just not going to cut it. This seems like it would be very good for dueling because it has like a horizontal, like diagonal slash, and then the follow-up thrust forward. Seems like it would catch enemies off guard. So this more feels like a dueling weapon. But this, honestly, I really enjoy this, like just sort of going through the process of discovering different weapons and their abilities and strengths and weaknesses. That moveset right there feels very strong. It's covering a wide array, like a wide range with the back and forth vertical slash. Seems like pretty easy to aim as well. That's definitely a contender. Bastard Sword would be a little bit slower. Yeah. That one also has a lot of heft to it. So I'm just taking a moment to try to appreciate like the heft, like the variety of different animations and feel of all these different weapons. You know, they all feel very satisfying in their own way. They feel, also more to the point though, they feel like they have different applications for different situations. Like, I'm not finding that like, oh, this one is objectively the best, that one's objectively worse. Right? I'm kind of finding that, how did I already lose the rapier? Okay, here we go. Oh, it's 25 dex. I'm finding that there are a variety of different weapons that I could see being useful or compelling under different circumstances. And basically just like looking forward to exploring what those circumstances could be. Lance looks like it could be fun, for sure. Maybe not as versatile. It's very, very straightforward. Just a lunging, piercing weapon. Twin Blade. How much dex do I need for that? 26. Yeah, I think I eventually want to get back into Twin Blades just because the moveset is just so cool. It's so unique. Although it's a little harder to um, use a shield with it. Not really the point. But it's still fun. And then I think that's it for now. I think I am going to get back to just exploring the world, facing the bosses and stuff like that.
Bearer of the sea, lest the
So, adaptability. I think people said that the soft cap for it was 17. So I'm going to go to 20. I'm going to go to 19, actually. Let's see. Let's keep going up with strength and dex, and up with adaptability too. Okay, there we go. So I think basically by now, by like, I think we're 12 hours in, gotten to the point where we no longer really need to invest points in adaptability. We can, if it's something that we, want to continue improving upon with regards to our overall, like, efficiency of movement economy, whatever you want to call it. But it's not really necessary. We've reached the point where I think the game feels perfectly fine responsiveness-wise. And any additional points we put into like attunement will just help increase our agility gradually. Now, I don't know how many times I'm going to attempt this, because I will say that this is probably my least favorite boss fight in the game. I don't think it's particularly fair, and I'm probably going to get upset. But I still want to give it a shot and see how it goes. See if it was as bad as I remember. Okay, yeah, I'm kind of upset. Heal, 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 heal. At least the toxic is not proceeding through while I'm knocked down. That's a small courtesy. Yeah, okay. So that didn't feel good at all. Let's try it again. So let's try with a crossbow this time. I think we have some bolts. Wood bolt should be fine. And let's try... I don't think I have anything to guard against poison. That being said, I forgot, I think I turned the music off. And the music for this fight is actually really cool, so I want to make sure I turn it back on. Oh, it's just low. Okay. Try it again. Oh, interesting. I didn't know it hurt the dogs as well. Okay, come on. Yeah, this is not a big fan of this. Mostly because it doesn't feel like I have enough time to really respond to anything appropriately. Like, nothing I do is going to, like, result in me being okay. See if I can get rid of the crossbow. Oh, great. Good time to stall out. What is happening? I honestly don't know what's happening. My controls are inverted. Okay. Alright, I can do this. I can do this. Nope, I can't do this. Okay, so I just accidentally inverted my controls in the middle of the boss fight. Well, that doesn't fucking help. Great. Glad I wasn't doing a hardcore run or anything. So I do have some thoughts about, whether or not this boss fight is fair or whatnot. But let me what I'm trying to do. It inverted the whole. God damn it. There we go. Okay. Oh, that feels so much better. Okay, so I unintentionally put myself over. Am I still? Wait, hang on. I'm still over. Why? Oh, because of the rings. Oh, the addition of the rings. That makes sense. Okay. That's okay. I'll just fix that real quick. So. Okay. So a big part of that was just my own stupidity because I was not expecting to be so heavy. So before I offer any commentary, judging the boss fight, let me see if I can approach it a little bit differently. Oh, and I think the common fruits do help. Well, they boost poison. I don't know if they're going to do anything against toxic. Let's see. What the hell? It's not gonna work. Maybe. Maybe. Okay. Okay, I actually have a chance. Alright, let's see how this goes. If I remember correctly, the rat himself was not that difficult. It was more the toxic beforehand. Now, I did hear this boss compared to Sif, and I don't think that comparison is really relevant, like, just because it's a big dog. What the hell? Like, the fact that we have a big canine type creature doesn't mean that I think that they were trying to reference Sif or anything like that. I will say that overall, as a boss fight, it's a pale. If it's an imitation, it's a pale imitation for sure. Like, this is not a Sif like tier boss fight by any means. It really does feel like they just put the rats in there as like a stats check to see if you have enough like health to power through it. Listen to the music though. I'm gonna shut up for a second and let the music play. It's so good. Well, that's interesting. Looks like he's limping. Not limping. Still kind of sad though. Jeez. Sorry, buddy. That was a very, very fast fadeaway at the end there. I'm surprised that the animation got cut so short. Oh, hey, Alherd, how's it going? Good evening. Good evening. I'm doing pretty well, thanks. How about you? Hope your day and week are going okay. Yeah, the speedruns of this game are incredible. People have been doing a combination of just both raw player skill and like exploits and glitches and stuff like that for a long time, and have come up with so many cool strategies to kind of push the game to its limit, which I think is pretty awesome. Oh yeah, this rat is Sif. Well, that's the thing. I think it's natural to want to make a comparison between this rat and Sif, and especially like for visual reasons. But well, in that it's just, it's a giant like canine type creature that's right there in your face and is leaping around in a similar way to Sif. The boss fight is thematically similar, I guess, but the narrative of Sif guarding Artorias' grave and everything involved in that, and then your connection with Sif through the DLC, I think has more, like a much more pronounced emotional weight to it than this does. And I do want to say, though, that this chamber here is something that I haven't, spent, I don't think, enough time thinking about. I really would love to hear some lore, because those tall, narrow doors like that have been are very, very similar to the doors that we've already been going through, like these over here. And so it seems to me that those aren't like just ceremonial or prisons or storage containers or anything like that. Like, they should be passages for something to pass through. Maybe the implication is that similar creatures like the rat dog that we just fought would be the sorts of things to pass through. But I don't know. It more looks like something the size and shape of like the ruined sentinel would pass through something like that. So it makes me wonder about what sorts of creatures inhabited this place, and especially since the germ and the primal warriors have taken over the area, they don't really fit the description for something that would walk through a sort of door like this either. So how and why are these, like, if this place belongs to those dwarven creatures, how and why are they constructing or maintaining or inhabiting a place like this? It just kind of like sends the imagination reeling, in a good way. Howard says pretty well so far. Okay, good. I'm glad. Yeah. Nice to know that everybody's doing okay. I've been writing poetry in my spare time, and that's awesome. Trying to review my stuff for the finals of my semester. What sorts of poetry do you write? What are some poets that have inspired you? I actually used to write poetry a long time ago. Can't claim that it was very good. It was all very sort of dark and brooding, like gothy sort of stuff, which was useful in sort of getting some of my abstract emotions, so to speak, out onto the page. I actually got roped up into like this sort of mini poetry scam. Like, I had been posting some of my poetry on DeviantArt a while ago, and then I had somebody reach out and say like, "Oh, hey, your poetry is so amazing. You should submit it for this contest." And I said, "Okay, go ahead." Submitted it. "Oh, hey, you won the contest because your poetry is so good." "Okay, awesome. Yeah. It's so good, in fact, that we're putting it in a book of poetry that only certain super, super good and amazing poets can be in. And tell you what, for a limited time, we'll send you a copy of the book, okay, for $50. Like, oh, okay, yeah. And so I didn't realize it at the time, but basically what the scam was is they were just going around and finding like amateur poets or whatever, and lying to them and saying that they were part of this competition. And really all they were doing was they were just taking their work and putting it into a book and then selling it back to them under the guise that it was like some sort of a national competition. The name was literally like National Registry of like Poet Exemplars or some like pretentious shit like that. And yeah, I don't know. It soured the mood a little bit, but it's fun. It's a great like emotional conduit. Howard says, more like freestyle in my case. Oh, cool. Not actual inspirations type, more just on spontaneity. Yeah, that's really cool. Freestyle, like rap sort of things, like spoken word, or yeah, I actually don't know much about like that genre of poetry, but I'd be happy to hear if you want to share some more. I will say that I like the subversion of this massive, beautiful, like quiet, haunting chamber, then transitioning back down to this. Like, you're expecting some maybe regal king, some massive, I don't know, something that's equal in stature to this. But this isn't where the king is. This isn't where the locus of power is found. The real power, the true authority, is here. Just a humble little rat sitting inside of a lockstone, minding his own business, twitching, sniffing. Really, really weird, but really, really cool. Just part of the game's like quirk and charm, in my opinion.
Leave this place, human. We have no time for thy kind. Humans bring nothing but filth.
It is intriguing and also deeply hilarious to have the mangy, toxic, like chittering little rat to say that we're the filthy ones.
Is that a rat tail, human? Thou'st one of mine rat Pharros conquered, this will not go unnoticed. Rejoice, for the right to serve me is now thine. Since thou art human still, permit me ask, wilt thou thy human soul surrender and pledge thyself to me? Swearest thou by the sweet-tempered sludge that laps at our bosoms? Thou hast the eyes of one who perceiveth true beauty. Human, thou mayst serve. Take this ring. It was forged by a human who was once among us. The ring draws to thee those who would defile our burrow. Wear the ring whenever thou art near, and destroy those who would dare provoke our ire. I will grant unto thee all thou shouldst so desire. I prithee serve with a true rat's honor. Speak thy mind, servant.
Okay, he has corrosive stuff, dung pies, common fruit, bleeding and petrify resist. That's all good.
My servant, tell me the way of things. There has been much honor in thy service, despite the human blood coursing thy veins. I am merciful, and trust in thee as I would any rat. The insolent fools line up to trample upon our burrows. My servant, dispatch these invaders, and thy reward will be handsome indeed. Knowest thee of the lockstones, those odd contraptions fashioned by human hand long ago? Thou art human, and thence able. I know thy kind, base plotters and schemers all. Put these contraptions to thy employ against thy foe. My servant, there has been much honor in thy
Okay, so,
My s-
Alright. So I have to admit that like I felt a special kinship with this little guy when I first played through. For whatever reason, I'm not sure if I could even explain it, but just something about his personality felt so kind of cool and unique and unexpected, and I kind of fell in love with it. And this was definitely my favorite covenant. I'm about to basically make a bunch of rhetorical questions, and I personally don't. I don't think that rhetorical questions are evidence of anything, and I don't think that they're necessarily super helpful to a discussion. So please keep in mind that these are meant as discussion starters and not as valid criticisms in and of themselves. But something that I'm wondering about here is that we came into the burrow, we went around killing things, including these kind of beautiful regal old knights and these admittedly toxic and not having a particularly good day dogs. But we came in and we slaughtered them, and then we cut off one of their tails, and then we brought it to him, and then he said, okay, because you did all of that, you now have the right to serve me, and I trust you just as I would trust any rat. And also, what you're going to do now is you're going to use this environment to prevent other people from doing the thing that you just did. So what's up with that is my question. And that's not a rhetorical question. Are we meant to kind of come to the conclusion that the rat here is kind of fucking with us? That he is just humoring us because we're passing through? Did he not have much of a connection to his authority, to the Royal Rat Authority? Did he not care about the dog rats, whatever they are, that were back in here? Is he totally disconnected from them? Is he happy that they're dead? Is he planning to betray us? Or is this just not finished? The way that he goes from his introduction to quickly saying hey, there has been honor in thy service, and therefore I trust you. Are we supposed to look at that and say, okay, this rat actually literally does trust us, and or sorry, is this rat actually um like trying to convey honestly that he does trust us diegetically, and it's just like very abruptly um implemented, not very particularly like quote unquote well done, natural feeling or whatever you want to call it? Or is he lying to us diegetically and he's being like, oh dude, that was so awesome, you came through, you killed my dog, you killed all the other dogs, that's like the best thing you could possibly do, I trust you so much, you should go out there and fight other humans, you know, like just you're one of the good ones, you should just go kill the other ones, you know. Like, I'm not sure. And I think which of those two like sides you fall on, so to speak, is going to, like, your perspective on that sort of thing in general is going to play a huge role in how you interface with this game, because so many of the things in the game are like either whimsical and cool and intriguing or just kind of broken. And it's difficult to argue that either approach is like objectively better or worse than the other. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I can say that I personally might have tried to implement it a bit differently. I personally would have preferred it if sec if your relationship with the rat was genuinely like very slow to grow and a direct and gradual consequence of you cleaning out the burrows, and you actually had more narrative reason to understand like why the burrows being like had been desecrated. Like, what does it mean to be a filthy human? Why is he calling you filthy? Maybe that's stuff that we're going to find out about later on by engaging with the Covenant. It's entirely possible that I'm just being like too what's the phrase for it? Over eager, over zealous, something like that. Okay, just barely made it. Okay. Yeah, you can see all that, like, it's hard to see, but on the stone that he's holding, there's all kinds of, like, intricate engravings. So despite the fact that they're, like, these big, bulky, slow-moving, not apparently super intelligent warriors, they are, well, I don't know about their intelligence, actually. But the shield that they're wielding, it does kind of look like two just giant pieces of stone, but it also seems to have like Aramaic or no, maybe more like Linear A or something written on it. Very, very ancient style of writing, but an intricate and precise script as well, with a certain artistry to it. I like the verticality of this level. I like the sort of yawning chasm below is definitely very atmospheric. Let's take a moment though to look at the Rat King ring, crest of the rat. Join this covenant and wear this ring to lure trespassers of the Rat King's territory into your world. If you receive this ring, rejoice in the opportunity to demonstrate your allegiance to an eminently noble being. Okay, interesting. And then I wanted to look at the tail as well. Demonstrate fidelity by offering it to the Rat King and strengthen the bond with your covenant. The Rat King is proud and merciful, as any king true to his stature should be. The Rat King looks favorably upon those who follow the path of right. It's so weird, though. It's like he's rewarding you for slaying other rats. So I guess the implication here is that he's fallen out of touch with his rats. Maybe the fact that like he's referring to himself as the Rat King and we just defeated the Royal Rat Authority means that there was some sort of a power struggle, and when he says that like you cleared out one of my burrows or whatever, you defeated one of my burrows, then he's saying like the one that rightfully belongs to me, that was, and then the implication is that it was usurped by the Royal Rat Authority, the Royal Rat Vanguard, that he's essentially been pushed into the shadows by his own, like, kin. Would be an interesting idea. Before I forget, it is kind of cool to see that the cracked blue and red orbs seem like fragmented pieces of the main blue and red orbs from the first game. Like almost that they were blue and red orbs that were kind of ground down over time, fragmented. But there might be fragmented or cracked eye orbs in the first game too. I don't recall off the top of my head. Let's look at the Rat Authority Soul. Those who choose to serve the Rat King must have the courage to face his challenges. Okay. Nothing really worth going into there as far as I can tell. I do think it is kind of funny that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different Lord Souls that I'm just kind of holding on to and don't really know what to do with. But that could just be a personality thing where like I'm hesitant to use unique consumables. I love how narrow and claustrophobic this hallway is. A good job it does setting us up for this. And again, like, this is one little hole in the wall that leads down into the area below. It kind of makes you wonder, where do all the other pathways lead to? Is the Rat King essentially like connected to a labyrinthian network of tunnels that extend throughout the entire kingdom or to multiple kingdoms? As part of his authority come from the fact that he's kind of connected to all those things in the way that no ruler of one single kingdom could be. This is also pretty terrifying. I don't know what the story is with this. I wish I did. But this fountain that's just completely filled with bones, like was there some sort of sacrifice, some sort of a purge? It's kind of, intriguing to see something like this directly, coming out of a place where you were told that humans were filthy or whatnot, and then you experience this, something that looks like a receptacle for drinking water, or maybe a fountain or something like that, and it's just filled with bones and decay. And then you come out here, and again, like, I really need to bone up on the lore here, but this is not exactly a super well implemented bit of graphics, in my opinion. Like, the meshes are a little simplistic. They don't look like charred flesh. Like, Dark Souls 3 does a much better job of rendering charred flesh. The bits of metal rebar, if that's what they are, that's how they always look to me, kind of coming out of the rock, feel a little bit cartoonish. It doesn't feel like super... It feels like it lacks the elegance that so much of the Souls series is characterized by. But still, it's a very striking image to kind of come out from this place that almost looks like an old cathedral or something. And then the first thing you see, you see a nice, warm, inviting glow outside the door. And it's like, is this a bonfire? Well, yes and no. It is very, very brutal and very striking. You see a little bit of the fire textures over there. The particle emitters are unfortunately a little bit desynced from like off position. It almost looks like the characters themselves are like crawling up to join the fire like this guy does. So there is still some good storytelling here, even when the game fails is a little too harsh of a word, but like doesn't quite succeed in living up to its own aspirations, visually speaking. Then I think it still does a good job of striking out and trying things that are in and of themselves compelling. You might have noticed, let me see if I can get the trigger again. You might have noticed that peasant over there, his animations look a little choppy, like they're in low frame rate. And so this is something I think that they're doing engine side as an optimization trick. Essentially, they assume that if you're far enough away from an enemy, that you don't need a high, like, all the resolution, so to speak, on their animation, right? So if they're out of view, they become less prioritized, and the engine doesn't need to render every single frame of animation. It skips some of them, or it plays like a reduced, frame animation, so it doesn't have to load all those different frames. I think it's a smart technique for sure. The problem is that the radius on it is just so low that you will kind of pretty frequently see that sort of thing happening, and it can break immersion a little bit. We got more falconers here. I do think that they, despite their broken animations, I do think they make for interesting enemies. They have these sort of nimble and curious shields. They're leaping back. Their animations are pretty well conceived, if not necessarily perfectly executed. Their ability to shoot multiple projectiles in quick succession is pretty cool. It's kind of a shame, maybe a missed opportunity, subjective, but it might be a missed opportunity that their weapons don't have, different types of status effect buildup, because the advantage of hitting multiple times in quick succession like that is that you can quickly, build up status. Oh, striking with the shield, that's cool. I don't believe I've seen them do that before. The idea that they're up on these palisades, or I'm not sure what the term for these wooden structures is that they're on, but that also encourages the player to engage in a little environmental destruction to kind of bring them down. It might have been more satisfying if they had, had the enemies take some damage when they fall or go prone or something. Because what you're probably going to do is probably going to expend multiple attacks in order to bring the thing down and then be out of stamina when they come down. But that's a pretty easy lesson to learn. It's not that hard to figure out, and then to just, get better at managing your stamina to bring it down. Now, I will say that I hate this so much, this part here. And of course, I'm going to give it 2 or 3 tries. But basically, the idea is that you have to jump into this little hole. Granted, it's short distance, so if you fuck up, you can just try it again. But I've never liked these little platforming challenges. At least that wasn't so bad. I do like the fact that the way the pigs attack animations are set up, or the boars, I guess they are. The way those animations are set up, it's 1 second. One sec. It's set up so that if you start just panic rolling away, the animation of the boar kind of dragging its tusks along the ground is liable to catch you and fling you into the air. So it kind of rewards you paying close attention to the animations and trying not to just use panic rolling as a get out of jail free card. Oh, yep. What the fuck? Oh, come on. Okay. So, hang on. I want to check the... Okay. Alright. So, I don't know what I did wrong there. I saw the message on the ground indicating that there was a that there was a trap in the chest. And I watched that chest, and I was like, okay, I'm not seeing it moving. And I watched it very carefully. I didn't see it move, which they supposedly always do. And so, that being said, who's this? No thanks. That being said, I watched it very carefully, and didn't see it move, and then I got behind it, and I attacked it from behind, and when it did its popping forward animation, even though I was behind it, it's been hard, I still got caught by it. And I was watching an explanation of why this is the case on YouTube a little while ago. And basically, when a character does an attack like that, they have an invisible sphere that surrounds them. and your character also has an invisible sphere. It's much more like a cylinder that surrounds you. And basically, if any part of your character overlaps with of that cylinder overlaps with the sphere on your enemy, then it's going to consider the two of you having collided, having connected, and if so, it's going to land the attack. If the attack is a grab attack, however, the enemy is probably only going to have like one position in which it can grab you, like with its teeth or with its hands or something like that. So it's then going to teleport you to the location of where you're supposed to like look like you've been grabbed by. So it's really not a problem. People say this is a problem with Dark Souls 2's hitboxes. Its hitboxes are broken. The hitboxes are actually working very well. The problem is that they don't have like a context-specific animation to then get you into place so that it looks like the hitboxes are working. In other words, under the hood, everything's working as intentional. Everything's working as intended. But unfortunately, they didn't have the animation budget, or they didn't, for one reason or another, implement the animations to go along with it, and it looks broken even though it's technically functioning. Oh, hello. That, on the other hand, probably not. I think this is cool. Like, that was a nice little area over there. Nothing to write home about per se, but we have some falconers. We have, a trap chest. We have the pigs. We have human miners or whatnot. It is really cool to notice that these peasants and miners, their weapons seem to have become engulfed in like darkness, and they do they do actually do curse energy or curse status build up. So if you're not careful, they will inflict curse on you just like the pursuer does. So I guess given that we found some of them like picking apart and carving into, I'll clear up here, into the corpses of enemies that people that we wound up getting souls from, like souls of a proud knight and stuff like that, the implication seems to be, I think this is a Berserk reference. If you're not familiar, Berserk is a manga that heavily inspired the Souls series, and there's a character called Guts who's the protagonist, and Guts fights a lot of characters who are like demons or essentially cursed, like from another plane of reality, and over time his sword spends so much time interacting with these things, so to speak, that his sword actually starts to take on like a cursed semi-magical property to it, to the point where it can then interact with stuff that it normally shouldn't be able to interact with, because it's essentially been stewing in the blood of all of these like dark things for all this time. So I'm guessing that the darkness has just started to subsume or overwhelm even these common tools, and then inflict curse upon other people because they've become cursed themselves. Now, this is kind of... I think I'm going to do the boss fight first, and then I'll come back. There's something that I want to talk about in that room, but first, just take a listen. You can hear the congregation sort of babbling in the distance. Okay, gonna focus up for a second here. Probably won't see chat. Okay, awesome. So, I think I kind of wish that I hadn't brought Ben Hart with me. I'm always split on using NPC summons because on the one hand, I do think that like I really want to increase their or like progress their quest lines, and so I don't want to just abandon them. But on the other hand, it does definitely change the overall progression of a fight. So this is interesting too. I think that's the only time we see one of those in the game, and maybe even in the series. The idea of there being a trap that just spawns a horde of enemies is pretty unique. Now, obviously, if you're not expecting it, that could potentially feel unfair, because all of a sudden, you go from being in a clear room to being totally mobbed on all sides. But, I mean, like, you do have plenty of time to start to wonder why all these spiders on the walls aren't attacking you. You have plenty of opportunity to start to feel like maybe something bad is going to happen. And then there's just like a conspicuous treasure chest placed in the middle of the room. It's a little, it feels a little obvious that something is going to go down. Hey buddy, are you okay up there? This guy broke? It's a shame. I want to see if I can hit him with a crossbow. One sec. Oh, yep. Oh, he's alive. Hi. That was weird. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I understand why people would feel like this ambush is unfair, but I don't agree. I think that the presence of the holes in the walls and like the spiders just sort of hanging in the ceiling, and also the fact that the spiders all have like horrible ghastly skull faces on their backs should just be a very ample warning sign to be on your guard one way or another. So a couple of things about this. I think this is supposed to be Velka, and I know that like everybody is Velka, like every unexplained character in the series is Velka, but the book in one hand and the spell catalyst on the other hand is something that feels evocative of like Velka's lore and the way that she's kind of depicted in the series. Granted, she's referred to as Kaitha or Kaitha in this game, but I think Dark Souls 3's Cleansing Chapel makes it pretty clear that Velka and Kaitha are just two aspects of the same god, or just two names of the same god. I think there's also like a black-haired witch talisman or something in Dark Souls 3 that's specifically, or maybe, no, Velka's talisman in Dark Souls 1 is made out of like a lock of dark hair. And the fact that she, books being alternately shown as signs of faith or intelligence, but I think in this case is being intended to convey her intellect, which is something that she uses to empower her spells. So given also that the main like primary caster in this area was somebody who was casting dark spells as well as part of a congregation, it makes me think that they are probably worshipping Velka in their own weird way, potentially misguided way. The boss itself, I think, is a decent... the boss and the boss run-up, I think, are both actually decent opportunities to start to prepare for getting attacked by swarms of enemies. Like, you're about to enter into Tseldora, where... Do I need to pronounce the T like that? You're about to enter Tseldora, and there's going to be a bunch of characters here who can attack you from range, spellcasters, and also like mobs of spiders and shit that just swarm you and wear you down. So I think overall, having a couple of enclosed arenas to get used to those ideas, and also a boss fight that's centered not around a duel with like one or two, imposing individual enemies, but instead having a variety of different enemies. Some are crawling along the ground, some are healing spellcasters, some are, one is a more like primary traditional threat. I think just having that variety is good. Encouraging you to switch between targets, to prioritize targets at different lines of sight is good as well. It's a different boss fight. It doesn't feel like as much of a skill check as as much of a it's less of a skill check and more of like an awareness and tactics check. But that's a good thing to kind of break it up. Not everything has to be like a skill gauntlet. Um, so yeah. Oh, Spectre's here. Hey, Spectre, how you doing? How's your week going so far? Thank you for stopping by. Just kind of exploring, taking our time to comment on the environment and the boss fights and stuff like that. Making our way through Seldora. I'm so used to saying fucking Tsukuyomi, with the like emphasizing the T, that now this area is called Seldora. It's Tseldora, and so now I just instinctively say tss, and I don't really need to. But anyway, of course, here we have a pardoner, and the pardoners are directly associated with Velka in Dark Souls 1. So I think this is even more evidence that this chapel or whatever we're in is meant to be one that is connected to Velka. And perhaps the congregation is not doing a very good job of worshipping her, but here she is nonetheless. So that then makes you wonder, we're about to come across the Duke and the Duke's dear Freya, and Freya has apparently inherited the soul of Seath from Dark Souls 1. So does that imply some sort of connection between Velka and Seath? You can start to see the ripples between these characters kind of echoing across the different games, which I think is really cool. Oh, you're doing fine. Good, good, good. I'm really glad to hear that. I'm doing fine as well. Just playing through the game. I've got, my cats and dog are kind of acting a little bit crazy in the background. So if you hear things falling down, that's probably why. But it's chill. We're just having a nice, kind of chill stream. This game is a sequel to Dark Souls 1, and it's basically about a character who tries to enter into a land of sort of like a medieval fantasy kingdom to cure a curse that they have, but then they find out once they get there that everybody who has tried to come to this place, everybody else who's come with a curse seeking a cure, seeking relief, they've all failed, and there apparently is no cure for the curse. And so you really are just kind of stuck here now, and you have to see if are you going to find a way to break free of it anyway, or are you going to basically do the impossible? And as you kind of go through the land, you start to realize that not only have individuals come and failed, but entire kingdoms have been built around different ideals and different goals and hopes and ambitions, and all of those kingdoms have also crumbled and fallen, and then new ones have risen in their place. So you're walking through essentially a graveyard of civilizations, and trying to figure out like what your place is. And ideally, like the overall narrative of the game suggests that like you could be the next king, right? So at the end of it all, after you beat all the bosses, you gain all the power, you have an opportunity to take the throne and become the next king. But after spending all of this time seeing how every other king has failed or crumbled away, what kind of king are you going to be? And that's the king or queen. And that's the question that the game is basically asking. Like, if everyone before you has failed, do you have what it takes to succeed anyway? And what are you going to do? What does success actually mean? Stuff like that. So it's really cheerful, really, really optimistic sort of game. But it's great. It's just like Dark Souls, except with a 2. I think Spectre says, I think they want to play the game. My service is so bad at work. I'm sorry to hear that. If you'd like to try to play the game, I definitely encourage it. It's challenging, it's punishing, but it's a lot of fun. It's very rewarding if you just stick with it. If you do decide to give it a shot, let me know, and I'll be happy to give you any tips or pointers if you like. Sorry to hear that the service is bad, though. That really sucks. Spectre also says, and because of that, I just missed out on like half of what you said, but I heard the part about what kind of person will you be. Well, that's the most important part. The gist of it is basically like, you have curse, come to kingdom, try to break the curse, try to become the king, but you learn about all the kings who failed before, and you start to think about what kind of king you're going to be if you succeed. Do you have what it takes to do the impossible? Oh, Spectre says, I meant they as in the cats and dogs, that's why they're making a ruckus. Yeah, they wish they could get in on the fun. Honestly, if I could find a way to like... I saw a stream of somebody who had like connected a grid to his fish tank, and his fish was like controlling the inputs on his character for Elden Ring or something like that, and his goldfish actually managed to beat Elden Ring. So if he can do that, maybe I can find something similar. Yeah, feel free to check it out on sale. I would recommend getting the Scholar of the First Sin edition. It's basically Dark Souls 2 came out a while ago, and then Dark Souls 2 had 3 different DLCs. And then Scholar of the First Sin came out, and Scholar of the First Sin is a collection that has the base game, all 3 DLCs, and also a bunch of bug fixes and enhancements and changes. There are some people who feel like it's they don't like the changes, but I have like several hundred hours in both the original and in Scholar of the First Sin, and I prefer Scholar. And it also comes with all the DLC, so I would recommend that. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. Okay. It is kind of cool to note that the spiders aren't necessarily hostile. That's also another interesting mechanic too. For people who have played Dark Souls 1 and 3, you'll be familiar with the idea that using a spell requires a certain level of intellect or faith, depending on which school of magic you're investing in. This very interestingly lets you reduce the amount of stat requirement behind one particular spell. So if you don't want to put a lot of points in intelligence, but there's one spell in particular, like you don't want to be a mage, but there's one spell you think is super, super cool, and so you want to invest some points into it, you don't want to waste your levels, you can store up a few of these and then bring like a level 50 intelligence spell down to level 40 over time and give yourself access to new things without having to waste your levels. Really, really cool idea. I don't know why they didn't experiment with that in later games. Spectre says that sounds funny. Yeah. It's a game with a lot of like quirkiness to it. It definitely has like a very weird sense of humor.
Something seems to be bothering you. Yes, I can tell. It is written upon your face. You have doubts about something you did. I am Cromwell. Regret, anguish, disillusion, bewilderment. What wonderful gifts they are. Together, they are the essence of life. Don't you agree?
1 second, sorry. Okay.
But now you're lost, bewildered by your own actions. You poor little thing. Yes, how tiny and frail are we? But if your heart is yet sincere, your sins will be forgiven. Now is the chance. Demonstrate your sincerity to me.
So this is interesting. Oh, 1 second. Spectre says, have you ever played the Batman Arkham games? Yes, I really, really like them a lot. I feel like for its generation, Arkham City was one of the best, if not the best, like open world games, just in general. Like it was definitely competitive against like Assassin's Creed and Far Cry. I really like Far Cry 3 and 4. So don't get me wrong, those are good games too, but and AC2 is really good too. But something about Arkham City just felt like such a well-realized, compelling world. The combat system was great. The chatter that you would hear from enemies was great. Like exploring the city, finding the trophies, like the Riddler trophies and all that was really awesome. I forget which game it was. It might have been Arkham Asylum, where they did that thing where they, like, if you had an Xbox, they like Red Ringed your Xbox while you were playing against a Scarecrow or something like that, and then they changed the cutscene and whatnot. Like they were doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So those games were really, really good. I don't remember as much about Arkham Knight. I know a lot of people were kind of upset about the transition away from stealth with like the car that was basically a tank. I didn't mind that so much. It just felt like a natural escalation of like the power in that your character had, that Batman had, I guess, with his gadgets and stuff like that. But I could definitely understand why some people would be frustrated away with the move away from stealth. Like the car was kind of OP. Okay, I do want to read some of this. I do want to point out also that this character, I'm pretty sure, I have to go back and check, that Cromwell in Dark Souls 1, or was it Oswald or... Oh, Cromwell here, so it must have been like Oswald in Dark Souls 1 specifically said that he is like an agent of Velka, and that Velka's domain is that of sin, and his arms are wide open and like inviting you in and beckoning. Here, his stance, like, this is essentially the same character, very similar voice, similar attire, maybe the same attire, but his hands are closed and folded over his chest, and he's saying, like, come to me, like, I'm the one who is going to absolve you of your sins. Oh, Spectre's taken off. No problem, man. I hope you have a good night, and thank you for stopping by. Hope work goes okay. Hope you have something fun planned for the weekend. I'm going to be doing a longer stream, I think, on Sunday for Naruto stuff, so feel free to stop by and chat if you like. Otherwise, thank you again for stopping by, and hope you have a good night. So our friend Cromwell over here seems to have almost like subverted the religion of Velka for himself. It almost feels like a schism in the church, right? Where a priest or a pope or something like that will say, you know, you need to come to me for salvation as opposed to coming to Jesus for salvation or something like that. So it's very interesting that so much is the same on the surface, but underneath there are subtle differences that make everything feel just a little bit off, a little uncanny, which I think is something that Dark Souls 2 does consistently, as we talked about, throughout its themes and story and characters and everything.
I, Cromwell, will pardon your sins.
But I need to go back and check with Dark Souls 1 to be sure. I just wanted to read the descriptions on some of these items over here. Oh yeah, he's got a lot of stuff, so I'm not going to read all of them, but the clerics of Drangleic were not viewed with particular reverence, and their positions were only preserved as a nod to tradition. Right, so Vendrick wasn't particularly impressed by spellcasters. Okay, so these are associated in the first game with Karim, the Earl of Karim, Earl Arstor. Okay, Saint Elizabeth. We talked about Saint Elizabeth and the reference to her. Let's see here. Interesting, he has a few miracles of the gods. This is cool. This is a reference to the Shulva DLC, Crown of the Sunken King. Pressing Prayer. Interesting, this spell was recently developed and may not be an authentic miracle. So I wonder if we're supposed to connect this with Keitha, because what's the requirements? No, it's a faith requirement thing. Just interestingly, like, this is not an original Tale of the Gods. This is something that's been developed more recently, which means it might actually be a sorcery in disguise that's being powered by faith. Just curious about that. Bit force. Yep, okay. Heavenly Thunder is a cool spell. You can see how some of the original spells have been kind of iterated on, tweaked, and like mutated over time. Temporary resistance to status effects, that's cool. Lindelt's aesthetic, so that's tying into the story of Lycia. Let's see. Created by Navlon. Awakens the souls of the long buried dead. The heretic Navlon was executed along with his entire village, and the mere utterance of his name became a crime. Some say it was because he sought to restore the banned art of resurrection. Interesting. So it comes from... So it's a hex, but it's cast with a chime as opposed to a sorcery. And it does require intellect as well. Interesting. I want to keep that.
Anyone can be forgiven, as long as he is sincere. No matter how terrible the sin. Surely, we all deserve mercy. Yes. We must never forget our sins.
Yeah, I don't remember there being much of a spider motif or like spider related characters in Dark Souls 1, so I'm trying to think of if there's any like connection there. I can't off the top of my head. That's why Cromwell would be you know, surrounded by spiders. I do think that this bonfire placement is a little bit of a troll. Not gonna lie. Maybe I'm being unfair, but like, it feels like it's just so easy to mess that up and to fall off there. I think that's a little unnecessary. I wonder if there's like a chapel or something like that in Dark Souls 1 that matches the what do you call it? Not the aesthetics, but the visual design of that. I guess aesthetics would work too. So, I don't find this level to be particularly fun to play through, and I'm going to try and keep in mind why as we play through, try and see if I can narrow it down and offer some like fair criticism. But essentially, I think part of the reason why is that, oh, that's interesting, a little vocal line there, is that, well, I don't know. I was gonna start talking shit, but actually, the level has a good amount of verticality to it. These little zip lines over here are kind of unique, even though they're a little bit wonky. The spellcasters are kind of cartoonish, but they're still like, kind of an interesting, like visually distinct enemy. Come on, please. No, what the? Okay, that's such bullshit. I'm just cursed to never be able to interact with those things appropriately. But yeah, I don't know. I really like the design of this area. It seems like it's vaguely like visually consistent with the other stuff that we've seen, the Doors of Pharros, right? Like with the little huts and windows and things kind of jutting out. I don't know if you just heard that in the left, that wah wah wah, that sound, but that was the that one sound that I've talked about that shows up in like every Souls game. I'm gonna try and focus here because I usually get swamped and die. So let's see. Okay, that sucks. Okay, so I think this is good. This is kind of making me kind of panic and look for cover. I'm definitely like overwhelmed, but I feel like I have a chance to push these guys back. I can see why like on a first playthrough you might get very frustrated by this, but at the same time the spells coming from those enemies are a present threat, but they don't feel like totally overwhelming. Like I have a response to them. This is a little tricky though because I don't have great ranged options. So I'm not sure what exactly I should do about him. I can always run. Nice to note that he is chanting his spells. Gives us an opportunity to take a look at him. He's kind of a goofy looking outfit. Good variety of spells that he's using though. Oh, here he goes. Okay. That helps. Thanks, buddy. You know something? He actually kinda vaguely looks like some of the early designs for giants. In that the giants, 1 second, I gotta watch out for that. Okay, I gotta focus for 1 second. I think Guthrie's gonna come behind me. Yep, okay. Okay, so, oh shit, yeah, that was the guy that I was talking about before. Who was inspired by the Dark Souls, like, build. And I gotta keep focusing because otherwise it's just gonna overwhelm me. I do have thoughts. I'll make sure I don't die. Okay. Get behind him. So I do feel like that was probably a little excessive, right? Like, there was just so much going on there. We had... Oh shit, come on. Oh, see, there's another thing. Maybe I should focus on dealing with him before I start talking. Okay. So there was a lot going on there, and I could definitely understand why like any player would be reasonably feel overwhelmed and feel like that was excessive. We had multiple enemies casting multiple spells from multiple directions simultaneously. We had a massive environmental hazard, which is very cool and visually interesting, and I really do like it. But also like makes navigation through this area particularly difficult. We had an exploding enemy here. We had a very narrow passageway that could, to clarify, that little red Titanite lizard would have exploded if I gotten too close to it and would have pushed me into the pit. We have a like humanoid spiders that we haven't seen before, like humans possessed by spiders. We have this petrifying basilisk. It just feels like the level is throwing everything it possibly can at us as quickly as possible. It's quite overwhelming. So that being said, like I feel like the level also gave us enough opportunities to find cover, to explore and find new avenues to kind of get away. Oh yeah, and then it throws the red phantom at us too. So it is a lot, but it also does give us opportunities to get away from it. And if we were to die, it's not a very long run back to the boss. So I don't know, it feels almost like the level itself is a bit of a boss fight in a way, in that it's just throwing all this stuff at us, which is kind of cool. But I can understand why some people might not like it. That being said, I just want to listen to the audio transition between these two spaces. So listen to the rumbling, listen to the shifting of the sands and all that. And then isn't that a nice transition with the ambience there? Let me go outside. See how the bass kind of shifts? It's still persistent, but it gets a little bit quieter, and everything just gets a little muffled and a little bit more atmospheric, a little bit more roomy as we enter into the interior. I really think that that's very well implemented. This story, I want like an hour-long lore video explaining what's going on here. I'm not going to pretend that I understand the lore, but let's just look at the fact that there are all of these very similar looking dolls. The dolls have a split right down the middle with what appears to be some sort of stitching or scarring. And this character over here as well, associated with Velka, being essentially the same character model as the Crow Demons from the Painted World of Ariamis in Dark Souls 1, sat here alone, just in a very lonely, forlorn, sort of draped over appearance, with a single candle. You know, actually if you look very closely, there's a very nice, kind of elegant design to it. It doesn't look like something that a massive quote-unquote crow demon should be able to like interact with delicately, but it's there. And I don't know, everything about this room, the presence of all of these, oh yeah, and then those dolls over there on the walls with these gaping holes in like where their hearts would be. I guess it's sort of on the wrong side, but still it does kind of look like that, right? Their vacant, kind of sorrowful expressions. It kind of puts into our heads, I think, the same kind of like vaguely humanoid, but also very eerie, very uncanny faces of the Pharros Lockstone doors, or panels, or whatever you want to call them. And the juxtaposition of this quiet, claustrophobic room with all these dolls to this gaping hole that's just like sucking everything down, is, and then also the goofy lizard there too. But it's a very striking juxtaposition of atmospheres, and it's something that this game does exceptionally well, and that the Souls series in general does exceptionally well as well. Just creating not only individually compelling like scenes and vibes and feelings, but then putting them together in such close proximity to one another in a way that feels completely bizarre but also totally natural at the same time.
Shall we meet again, kind traveler? This is my workshop. In your tongue, I believe I would be called a blacksmith. I create all manner of equipment. using an ancient technique unique to my people. Normally, I only cater to a very select few. But I have a debt to you. I will craft one thing of your choice. My wares are far from ordinary. I am certain that they will please you. I require no payment this time, but you must bring me a wondrous soul. My technique absolutely requires it. I trust you will understand.
Yeah. So I was trying to think about how to phrase this. A lot of things in Dark Souls 2 are kind of like fragile iterations of things from Dark Souls 1, meaning that they iterate on concepts, locations, ideas, characters, etc. from the first game, but wind up losing something in that process. So a character's identity will change, like Paris, the bow hunter, being like misinterpreted or reinterpreted as Evlana, the goddess of the hunt, or something like that. But this is interesting in that it adds more context retrospectively to a character, to a race of characters. The crow demons in the Painted World of Ariamis almost seem to be like these belligerent, demonic, bloodthirsty creatures that just attack you on sight and try to eviscerate you, essentially, in a very primal and very kind of stark, striking way. But now we learned that these creatures are capable not only of forging artifacts, but actually taking the soul and manipulating the soul in a unique and specific and delicate way that's part of a tradition that goes back generations, maybe even millennia, and it seems to be something that carries with it a certain amount of artistry as well. So I love the fact that this change in particular, this part of the narrative in particular, feels like it's actively adding more context and more flavor to something from a previous game instead of the sort of wearing down of tradition that we see in so many other aspects of the game.
The nature of an item is greatly influenced by the soul that was used to create it. They can be tricky to use, but when wielded properly, are extremely powerful. This is what I meant by unique. These wares are not for use by ordinary folk. It's hard to believe now, but this land was once a flourishing kingdom. Its king, Drangleic, came close to unlocking the essence of the soul. What a dazzling soul he surely had. Imagine what I might create with such a powerful soul.
One second, sorry. Okay, so I do like the idea that Ornifex is a little bit mischievous in that, on the one hand, she's like, oh, yes, I have this ancient tradition that we craft beautiful things from beautiful souls. But then she's also got like a little bit of, I don't know, she wants she wants you to specifically go out and get the most powerful soul in the kingdom. I think because she's intrigued just to see what she could do with it. So it's a subtle thing. She's not very overt with like expressing that to us, but it does feel a little bit cheeky. And I like that there's a little bit of a hint of her, like maybe not like manic nature or anything like that, but just a little bit of something extra about her, if that makes sense. So let's see. This could be good to try. Attacks damage wielder. Interesting. Its blade saps the life of its wielder. The true nature of this sword is unknown even to the Lost Sinner herself. Those who choose this sword will share the burden of the Lost Sinner's misdeeds. Interesting. I feel like this is pretty cool. There aren't too many weapons that actually damage the player. I think the Chaos Blade, or like Hiltless did in Demon Souls, but this seems more up my alley, even though I'm a little ways away
Come
from
back
using it.
again if you find another soul. What deal?
Also, I could do both, actually. But I guess I'll leave that one alone for now. Let's see. Interesting to note that she's a smith. She can repair things as well as do her soul transposition. Oh, I can upgrade the battle axe. 1 second. Yes? Oh, thank you. Actually, could you take that back down because... Oh, thank you. My partner just brought me a snack. Okay. So, let's see. Actually, I'm gonna take 1 second and actually take a quick bathroom break and also close the door and just check on the pets. So I will be right back, and we'll get back to it and see if we can get to the Duke's Dear Freya. Okay, getting started again. Just a second. Okay, here we go. By the way, if anybody's on Discord, sorry that I'm not paying attention to that at the moment. Just my setup is a little weird because of the glitches that I mentioned before with OBS and Dark Souls 2. So hopefully I'll have those sorted out by next time. I think it's probably worth continuing to upgrade the battle axe. I know it's kind of boring. I'm gonna play around with some other weapons off stream and kind of get back up to speed.
Come back again.
Or not get back up to speed. Get a couple of other options that are upgraded and viable. But also for this stream, I did kind of want to just focus on a very simple, straightforward build that I thought, would be relatively representative of an average playthrough. Bashful Ray over here was, I believe, a character who was introduced in the Scholar of the First Sin. I think it was also a reference to a character online that somebody had created. I like his build a lot. It's quite interesting. He's got the 2 daggers. He's got a mask on. He has a permanent like silence spell on his feet, so he doesn't make any noise as he goes around. And he's got the binoculars. Yeah, I think there was a character called like Fapping Guy or Shy Guy or something like that, and basically he would show up in certain areas and just like watch the player, and then he would do a certain suggestive animation, and that led to some, interesting memes in the community, I guess. And so the developers decided to put him in the game. So on the one hand, it's kind of cool. Yeah, you can see he's kind of like peeping on stuff. On the one hand, it is kind of cool that the developers are that in tune with their community, that they're like paying attention and offering support, so to speak, by like encouraging people to create builds that then are effectively rendered canon to a certain extent. It must feel really cool to have a build that you create and then see that brought to life in the game and recognized, and also to be a fan of that person's content and then recognize it in the game. I will say that given that it is essentially based on a meme, though, it would totally be fair to say that you feel that it ruins your immersion, or at least threatens your immersion, because if all you can see is like this goofy, gimmicky like meme, it felt a little loud. Hopefully the volume on the stream is okay. If all you can see is the meme, then you might not be able to just enjoy it diegetically, in a way that you can continue to be immersed. Like, oh, okay, I saw that coming, but that was still cool. That was cool. I like that. That's another one of those things where I feel like, you would be well within your rights to feel like that was kind of cheap, but I didn't necessarily. It felt okay. Because I could kind of see it coming, and I was like, if I actually put in the effort to get out of the way, I feel like I could have avoided it. That's cool. Like, it's the game almost subverting, the thing that you learned previously, where your character would have previously learned that you can chop things down to get access to enemies and ruin their day. But now your own actions are having a negative consequence on you by removing like the environment from you. This, I believe, is... Yeah, so this is interesting that it says too heavy to open, which is a unique message. And then if you look down on the ground, you can kind of see that there's some sand flowing out. And I didn't figure this out on my own the first time I played through the game. But the idea here is that you're supposed to figure out that you can break the door, that, and then it pushes you back. I'm pretty sure that in the original game it did a lot more damage than that, but I could be mistaken. And I don't think there's anything you can really do here yet. But later on, this becomes the set piece for an interesting conflict between two characters, Pate and Creighton, that you have an opportunity to intervene in. Now, this area here is kind of weird. I don't remember if these characters were here in the original. Trying to recall. You can walk on the spikes, and it will damage you a little bit, and it will damage your equipment as well. What's interesting is that these characters themselves won't approach you or do anything to you unless you aggro them. So if I equip my crossbow and like hit one of them, actually I have to aim, I think. Then you'll see that he'll start to run. And as he starts to run, he starts to take damage. Like, they all start to take damage now. So that's kind of interesting. In order to enable them to stay in their, like, idle state and mine from the rocks, they essentially had to turn off their damage system, make them immune to the damage that they're taking from the rocks, Sorry, I'm gonna... The sound of the constant stabbing can be a little distracting. But yeah, so they basically had to turn off their damage response so that they could do that. And then they turn it back on the moment that you start attacking them. And I think that's... I get what they were going for. They were trying to make it so that as they were actively moving over the rocks, they were taking damage from the spikes, which I think would have been, you know, a powerful enough bit of storytelling in and of itself. But unfortunately, just due to the way that they implemented it, it really feels very buggy. I like the idea, but I think it's another example of Dark Souls' ambition maybe somewhat exceeding their ability to really execute on it within the constraints that they had. The narrative that's sort of being suggested there, though, of like being stuck in this place and being forced to just, you know, work beyond hollowing is kind of terrifying in a good way. I think I need a key to get in here. Yeah. So the one thing that I'll say is that so far I haven't found a bonfire, and this is one of the longer bonfire runs that I've come across so far, and it feels a little like, how can I say, getting a little distracted by the enemies. First and foremost, let me make sure that I stop like fat rolling, because really that's going to be an issue. Okay, here we go. Actually, I don't even really need... I'll keep my crossbow for now. Okay, so I'm in a really interesting situation right now, in that oh, hello. I don't really think I have enough healing to make it through to the boss. At least I'm skeptical of that fact. However, I do have a companion, and I do have a bunch of consumables outside of my Estus flask that might, excuse me, might allow me to do it. So, basically, there is a way to get to a bonfire that's right near Ornifex, and I'm gonna have to go to it eventually, because I want like a bonfire that's close to the vendor. But at the same time, I also kind of like the idea of being a bit out of my league and having to try to scrounge together like whatever healing I can muster and see if I can survive. So I'm gonna try that and see how far I get. I'm probably gonna die, but it's still kind of fun to make the attempt. If you're wondering why I didn't summon Manhunter O'Hara, it's because, if I'm remembering correctly, there's another NPC that I can summon. Did Ray not follow me though? Wait, I need Ray. What the fuck? Okay, if Ray's not gonna come down... Oh, there he is. Okay. At that point, I was gonna maybe like save and quit out. Because I think it does up the HP of the enemies as you summon more people. I think that applies to NPCs too. So if you're wondering why I didn't summon O'Hara, it's because I think there's another NPC down here somewhere that that is also like more plot related, so to speak. Like, I don't think that there's any like questline progression or anything with O'Hara. I think one of the NPCs that you can recruit will eventually teach you a gesture if you recruit them 3 times, but that might actually be... No, I think that's somebody in Dark Souls 3. So yeah, there are like narrative reasons or like questline reasons, so to speak, to summon people like what's her name, like Lucatiel, but not so much O'Hara. Not so much Ray either. I probably should have just taken O'Hara over Ray because of her access to like bow stuff. So this might just be me reading into things too much. I mean, it probably is. But I wonder if the spider webs here were meant to be a bit of a throwback thematically to the Crystal Caves, because Seath's soul wound up here. I don't know if the Duke's Dear Freya has it specifically, like inherited it, or just like found it in the cave, or exactly how that works. But there are definite parallels between this area and its inhabitants and Seath, the Scaleless from Dark Souls 1. And so, obviously there is an approach to Seath's boss fight which involved kind of having to navigate through these crystal spires. And in addition to that, having to be very careful about the way you were navigating, because there would be like invisible pathways and such. Very long boss run, but also one that's very like iconic and unique. And so I wonder if the idea here was to try to use the spider webs to create a similar feeling, but also again to like transpose it. Sorry for that noise. To transpose it, so to speak, and to make it more Dark Souls 2 Ian, if that makes any sense at all. So, if I remember correctly, you can use a torch to keep the spiders away from you, which maybe I should have done before now. I might try to do that during the boss fight. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to see if I can bring out a flame butterfly. Yep. And what else do I have? Oh, let's see. That can restore some HP. Wouldn't be too bad of an idea. Don't really have much else in the way of buffs. Okay, got some poison cures. This might be good to use, magic defense, as the Duke's Dear Freya uses those big laser magic bursts. And I know I saw another summon sign around here. Let me just find it real quick and then we're going to go do the boss. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so I was mistaken. I thought there was another character down here that was a named character, like a character that you can actively talk to. But this is an interesting array of characters that were given to us. I guess you could argue that maybe having 3 summons this close to the boss is a little excessive. I don't know. That might feel, a little much, honestly. But, having options is good. The design and the variety in the characters is nice, too. So it might be a case of, like, Dark Souls 2 maybe overextending a little bit, like doing a little too much. That red overlay, by the way, I think is supposed to look like your character's eye is, being intensified. Yeah, I think that's supposed to be Seath. Or if not, like a dragon that inherited his soul. Oh, it doesn't look like Seath, so it's probably not literally him. A successor or whatnot. Okay. First thing I'm gonna do is run away. Now, personally, I tend to feel like boss fights that involve summoning additional mobs is like one of the quote-unquote sins of boss design. Like, I tend to be very critical of it. And I'm not going to make an exception here either. Like, I don't know. I have very strong opinions about this particular thing. It's like a pet peeve of mine, I guess you could say. That I feel like, well, okay, maybe we should focus for a second. There's definitely a way to do it correctly. In my mind, the way to do it correctly is to have the spawning of the boss mobs feel like something that is unique and important to the boss fight. Like it's a deliberate part of the boss fight, as opposed to just like, here is a boss fight with a boring character, and then also we threw a bunch of like trash mobs on top of it. So I guess it's not like that I have a problem with it in principle. It's more that like I just want it to be integrated in a way that feels natural to the boss fight itself. And I guess it does for the most part over here. So again, maybe I should have played this one-on-one to kind of evaluate it solo, but I still think I'm getting a pretty good sense of things. The attacks are slow and deliberate, they're wide-ranging. I think there's like a sticky, like some webbing on the ground. Hitting the head is kind of satisfying. Having the boss kind of turn around like that is pretty cool. This feels like a little bit bullshit. Like, I'm not... I guess the purpose of that attack is specifically to, like, cause players to back off entirely and just have the boss do a complete reset. Which makes sense. But I wish that she had, like, given, like, a battle cry beforehand or something like that. Because I feel like something like a multi-stage attack that involves, like, flailing around in every direction and involves projectile, spit, or vomit, or whatever the hell it is, and also flailing around with all the limbs. Definitely... Whoa, that's cool. Definitely feels like something that should be very well advertised, and the way that it just sort of comes out like that, it feels less well telegraphed than some of your random attacks. I also don't feel like the spawning of the spiders was super well telegraphed, but I'm not sure that I really listened for that very carefully either. I mean, overall, so far this feels pretty exciting. I don't know how I would feel about it if I were fighting the boss solo, because the attacks themselves aren't, like, super varied. It's a very limited moveset if you just go by the numbers, and there's... Okay, that felt a little unfair. There's definitely some clunkiness about it, but it felt exciting, like seeing one of the characters there use like a flame spire spell, seeing the boss like flail around and spin around and stuff like that, and have different attacks, some of which were kind of wide ranging, others which were more narrow. The spawning of additional mobs, I mean, the whole thing felt very fluid, very engaging. I do feel like some of the attacks were maybe a little bit overtuned and the telegraphs weren't all that great, and it felt like maybe they were encouraging us to just back off and play cautious and then run in and poke. I don't think it would have been as fun playing single player. I think it's one of those bosses that is designed for multiplayer, like a raid boss. And on the one hand, I'm sort of tempted to say, okay, well, not everybody's going to play online, not everybody wants to play online or can play online, and so making a multiplayer only boss is kind of lame. But then they do provide not just a Solaire or something outside the gate to tank hits for you, but they provide multiple different characters with multiple different classes. We had a ranger, we had like an assassin pyromancer, and then we had a standard warrior. And so if you try this run a few times, you can pick and choose the warriors that you want to bring with you, and then kind of deploy them and make your own little raiding party. So again, is this as elegant and dynamic and as satisfying and graceful a boss fight as, like, I don't know, Radagon or something like that in Elden Ring, or Rolana or something like that? No, it's not. It's clunky, it's more primitive, it's more limited in some ways. But is it still a cool, like, spectacle fight? Does it still have an identity, something that it is trying to do, trying to say? And does it have, like, a decent array of ways to try to allow you to do that? Yeah, I think so. I think it's a success overall. I'm also absolutely obsessed with the sound that plays when you embrace a great soul. It's so, I don't know, it sounds like nothing I've ever heard before. It's just so beautiful and haunting and perfect for the moment. The way that this dragon is positioned as well looks like he's completely wrapped up in webs, and again, bears investigation and delving into the lore to find out what it really means and everything like that. But what a cool bit of imagery to see this dragon, who actually looks a lot like the ancient dragon that we fight later on in the game, who is clearly associated with Seath, either a successor of Seath's or maybe like a different avatar of Seath himself, basically belching up the soul with this almost like delicate and graceful like strand of, could be webbing or it could be something else that's coming out of him. It makes me wonder if he was like imprisoned here and forced to give up his soul. And then the soul went into Freya. And look at the, I never noticed that before. Look at the ground. Like the mud is just, um, I guess it's not as dense as I thought, but I was seeing a couple of rib cages and skulls in there. Yeah, there's more over here. Look at that. So this place has been a feeding ground potentially for, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of souls that have come here. It's just a very creepy and very well realized area. Get back, you get a look at it. Oh yeah, like look at how massive he is. It's completely wrapped up, and his wings extend all the way up there. Such a cool bit of imagery. All that might and majesty and fury and power just like defeated by some sticky threads. Wait. That's interesting. So, this is the great soul that was like connected to the Witch of Izalith. This is the great soul. This is the great soul that we got from here, but it's not, it doesn't like have the same appearance as this. That's very interesting. The writhing ruin, what the fuck? This, oh, so the place we're in right now is called the Writhing Ruin. The Writhing Ruin is an ancient thing whose shadow remains cast over the land. It first took possession of a solitary insect, but grew its power, feasting on the wealth of twisted souls found in the land. This is really interesting. I don't know what it means exactly. Shadow remains cast over the land. I gotta think about that. So, okay, the writhing ruin is not actually a place. It's a thing, it's a force. And the force infected this little insect, and then the insect grew and grew and grew by feeding on more and more and more souls. Wow, that's really cool. I have hundreds of hours in this game and I never like processed that. I wonder if it's something that they added for Scholar. The Writhing Ruin. What a cool, kind of chilling sounding name. Here's the Duke. Cool. I think that's a nice little twist there, you know, like having him face away from you, having the icon kind of appear as you enter the room, or like the text appear as you enter the room, making you think that you're entering an entirely new area. Maybe you're going to have an audience with the king, and then it turns out that he's totally hollow. I think that's a really nice moment. Worth looking around the room a little bit. I mean, I'm probably missing something here, but I feel like this is kind of a bit of a tongue-in-cheek nod to Seath from Dark Souls 1. You know, Seath was called a Duke, so we have a Duke here as well. We had the Duke's Grand Archives in Dark Souls 1, and we have, you know, another archive over here, except it's far, far less impressive. So maybe it's just supposed to indicate that this Duke is a pale imitation of the Duke from before. Very interesting that we have a cage here. It looks like something has broken out of it. So I wonder if that was potentially the Duke's spider that managed to get out and then became that, or something else entirely. But it is an interesting bit of imagery. Looks like we have, I believe the term for that is an astrolabe, right? There's a very strange object right there. Almost looks like something out of Bloodborne. But yeah, there's a couple of nice little details kind of scattered throughout. It's basically just a little library, but still, that astrolabe looking thing is the exact same model as the one that was on the ship that got from the travels from the Lost Bastille to the No Man's Wharf, so maybe a connection there. It could just be a reused asset, but it could also be a lore connection between the Duke here and that area. And then this little elegant tea set, kind of a nice little detail. I don't know if he was maybe about to get out to meet someone. Now, this is interesting. So, in Dark Souls 2 Vanilla, this area used to have a roving NPC. And that NPC was a headless dude with twin swords called Vengarl. And it was the one, of course, the body of the head of Vengarl that we found before. Now they removed it from here. And I think that's probably a good thing, because in base Dark Souls 2, you would go through that whole fight with the Duke's Dear Freya, and then when you would get to the Duke and then have another thing to kill, and then come in here and then have another thing that's patrolling around that's preventing you from accessing the bonfire. And considering that you might have missed the bonfire by Ornifex, that's a very long run back to then get your souls from just killing the Duke's Dear Freya, and get them back and then fight this incredibly terrifying and dangerous enemy that you might actually not be able to kill till later. So I feel like that was a little excessive, and I feel like Scholar toning it down a little bit was probably a good thing. Okay, so I think that's a great place to stop for tonight. That's 2 great souls that we've managed to collect, embrace. That was definitely not one of my favorite areas of the game, but it was still fun to talk about and go through. And there's a lot of little details that I don't even really pick up on unless I actively talk about them and share them. So really, again, grateful for the opportunity to just be able to chat with you folks about these levels and about what is found in them, because doing so always, helps me see them in a new light.
The soul and the curse are one and the same. Your soul has grown stronger still. I only hope it brings you what you wish.
And with that, I think I'm going to leave it for there. So, quick little stream update before I sign off. I am planning on doing a somewhat longer stream on Sunday, probably, because I'd like to look at the brutal Honestly Cognizer versus Pain video and see how much of it I can get through. It's been great having the opportunity to talk about a variety of different topics that people have brought up on stream, and to take tangents and to look into things. That's all been awesome. And also, I don't want to stop doing that, but I do want to see if we can make some good progress and get through a big chunk of the video, because eventually, I'd like to move on and discuss other sources of conversation, if that makes sense. Not just focus on noodles related stuff indefinitely. So that being said, let's see how that goes, see how far we can get, and then I'm sure going through that will generate a bunch of topics for us to talk about. For example, when thinking about some of the arguments that came up in that video, one of the things was the concept of an Edo Tensei nerf. How much are Edo Tensei reduced in overall stats compared to their alive selves? That's something that I think could be another topic for a stream. So inevitably we're going to wind up getting topics that'll be fun to talk about out of that. Just want to see what happens if we do a bit of a more focused investigation, so to speak, or reaction, so to speak. As for the soul stuff, I'm still feeling like I want to proceed with Dark Souls 2 for a little bit, but I might also take a break and switch over to Elden Ring. I think it's about time that I put a poll up and see how people feel about it. I still have a lot of one way or another, I'm going to play through Scholar and I'm going to play through Vanilla Dark Souls 2 before I make a video about it. So if people are enjoying this playthrough, then I'll keep going with that. And if not, I'll switch back to Elden Ring and I'll continue the playthrough on my own time. Lastly, I am still working on that special stream. I have an idea for something that I think will be a lot of fun, and I just need to do some time, like take some time to like prepare some materials for it. So hopefully I'll be able to do that this weekend, and then that stream will be next week. Be a little bit of a different thing, and if not, it'll be the week after that. But it's coming soon. So as always, thank you for your time. Thank you for checking out the stream. Thank you for sharing in the discussion. Any feedback, concerns, comments, suggestions, anything you might want to share, please leave them in the comments. We also have a Discord. If you'd like to be invited, please let me know. More than happy to have you. And in the meantime, in the meantime, I'll learn to enunciate and then say, I hope you have a great night and a great week. See you later.